everybody. Welcome to the Game Junkie Show, episode 7. And since it is Pride Month, we are going to do an episode today on representation. Now, please understand that the goal here is not to push a political agenda, but to have some people who are in this community share their own experiences and opinions on the topic, because representation does play a huge role in mental health support and in human rights advancement. So today I have Julia with us.
Hello.
And Rob, who's joining us for the first time.
Good evening.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
Julia,
you for having me.
why don't you kind of kick it off a little bit, just because I know we're all pretty passionate about this topic, and I have seen you make some comments and say some things before that I thought were really intelligent, that I think is strong messaging that needs to be heard.
So I wanted to talk about diversity in video games because I see a lot of people just anywhere at large, passing, friends even, talk about diversity like it's a political agenda. Like people like that don't exist in real life. And it's just not true. Being gay or bisexual or different in any capacity is not a political statement. It's just life. People like that exist.
Rob, why do you think people think that way? What do you think the mentality is when somebody looks at those characters and says, oh, that's a political statement?
I think they see or hear different, and alarm bells go off if they're not keyed in to that subject. And it's something they don't understand, so they kind of take everything they don't understand and put it in a bucket, I guess. And just say, I don't understand that. I'm going to put it over here and just complain instead of just trying to understand slightly. Because if they took a minute to understand, they would get it, I think.
I think that some people, at least I know that I have friends, and I've actually asked them before what makes, I've had people say, well, they'll say, well, that's pushing it in my face. Well, why do you feel like it's pushing it in your face? And I think, based on what people say, really poorly written characters kind of suck. So if you have something there that's like the token person, or a really poorly written, like if you have a gay guy in there just to be like the butt of every joke, that maybe doesn't have a lot of, like, it's not a fleshed out character, maybe that is what people think feels forced, rather than a very real, diverse character that has a lot of layers like we would in the real world.
Yeah. And, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say, yeah, I feel like maybe about 15 years ago, there was a lot of just those characters, which is like the stereotypes. They don't show up too much now. Now they try and put some effort in. But you don't really hear about how well written a character is, because you just hear the backlash of that character existing.
That's true, isn't it? We do hear more about the negative. So since we are specifically kind of talking about gaming, but it doesn't have to be gaming, who would you guys say, in your opinion, are some characters that represent the community that are really well written?
Ellie from The Last of Us. I mean, you can't get any more well written than that, while also like she's gay. So what? Who cares?
Do you have any that you can think of, Rob, that you say this is a really, really well thought out character?
I'm going to say, I don't know if they count because they're kind of a genderless alien. But now that Mass Effect's come back out, Liara is basically a female. They try and dance around it a lot in 1 and 2. In 3, they don't bother. They just kind of say she, and they just go for the gay in 3. And that's like a free game character arc with a gay character. And it's an arc you can miss if you don't pursue it as well.
Oh yeah.
Which is why a lot of characters in like Mass Effect and Dragon Age that are gay, they're all optional, so you miss out on a lot of that if you don't pursue it.
There's also, so I don't think it's explicitly said or anything like that, but I don't even know if they are gay or whatever, but I thought they were really good, well written characters. Was Chloe and Nadine.
Oh,
I loved that one. And it's like, but people were on this train of, oh, Neil Druckmann is just trying to be woke, and it's like, is he?
My
Is
least
he
favorite
that
word is woke
woke?
currently.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't understand. I don't know if it's because I'm a little older or like, I don't know where this magical ticker is where you look every day and it's like a stock exchange that tells you the new word to call something or like I'm not even sure that I fully understand what that term is. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not very hip on lingo and I don't even know that
It
I fully understand.
changes. It depends on who you're talking to. It usually means uh, a gay or a female character front and center as opposed to sidelined.
That's what,
Essentially,
that's what the
like
term woke means.
that's what people use it in like gaming. It means a lot depending on where you are. But if you see like if Sony like reveals a new game and it's a female in character, people say, "Oh, okay, well, Sony are getting woke again."
Okay, so it's kind of like a
Yeah.
term that you can use broadly to describe if you're saying that somebody's trying to push an agenda through representation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay.
also use SJW. It's pretty interchangeable at this point. They just go
Well,
back and
I
forth.
don't know if Chloe is gay, but if she is, animate me and put me in the jungle because Chloe was my first video game crush, and Chloe is ridiculously hot. I know she's a video game, but she's modeled so beautifully and she's kick ass, and I'm all for it.
I'm
She's
actually really partial to Nadine. Oh my god. I
Chloe's
love Nadine.
very she's very heavily implied to be like bisexual, not explicitly, but at least a little bit enough
Okay.
where they can get away with it and people won't complain. At the very least.
So, as far as like the term woke, as far as how I understand it, is like woke, awake. You know, I've been awakened. I have awareness, kind of a thing, is where I think it came from. Like, I have awareness that there are like gay people, and I want to shed light on that, kind of a thing. So, I think that's where it kind of stems from.
So, I mean, there's obviously different levels of awareness. I mean, it's good to be aware, but then some people might uh, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Some people might be overly aware and get mad that Aloy has dreadlocks in like
Mm.
post-apocalyptic civilization.
Yeah.
So is that kind of like there's a spectrum there that
Yeah.
am I understanding that correctly? Okay. Well, I mean, I'm with Julia. There's no political agenda except to say, you know what, as content creators, we know that you exist. And I think that's really, I know for me, I'm going to be 40 this year. I was an adult. I was in my 20s before I ever saw a relationship on TV reflect the way that I felt. Do you guys remember how old you were when you like had that experience and you like said, "Oh my god, I'm not alone. I see something that reflects me"?
I saw it before I even thought about my sexuality. I was 10. I remember back to Mass Effect again. It was no, it must have been about 12. About Mass Effect 3. There's a character. There's a shuttle pilot, just a kind of a background character, but who his arc is very explicitly about his like husband that passed away, and I'd never seen that before in a game, and it didn't click in my head. But it's the first time I remember seeing it and thinking, "Oh, okay, that that's just a thing."
So at the time, it didn't have any kind of effect on you because you weren't even sure.
It had an effect in a sense that it made me a lot more open and aware to uh, LGBT people, but it didn't have an effect on my sexuality. Though that was just a random event that happened. There was no trigger for that. I just woke up one day and brain switched on.
Right? Brain switched on. It switched on, baby. Julia,
Yeah,
So,
do you remember the first character that you saw that you felt represented you or represented how you felt?
So I honestly feel like I'm still looking for my white whale, kind of a deal. I don't know. It's really hard to find somebody to relate to when you are so much in the middle of the scale, you know? And it's like I'm hyper feminine, right? I really love feminine things. But on the other hand, I do woodworking. I'm a jeweler. I deal with fire and hammers, and I could probably kick your ass, kind of a thing. So it's really hard for me to. I think I just need to play more games, to be honest. Like I need to play more games. My person is out there. I just need to find them. So since this is on YouTube, if anybody could direct me in the way that I need to be directed, please feel free to comment that in the comment
So
section.
we're looking for that
Uh,
ideal kind of hybrid character,
Yes.
like soft and a cuddly bean, but also a badass. I
Yeah.
can think of a
I guess.
TV. I can think of a TV show character, maybe, but not a video game character at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, video game characters, they're usually stereotyped, you know. It's usually like a one note kind of thing. Not that a character can't be one noted in their sexuality and the way that they are that way, but also be well written characters. They can be, but usually it's like they have assigned stuff. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
mm,
No, that totally makes sense. And I know for people my age, I mean, I can only speak for my own experience. I grew up in a really small, very conservative cow town where like everybody owned ranches. It was farmland. It was really, really very small. Like the whole county was very big, but only had like maybe 5,000 people, and everybody had lots of property. And I didn't know a single person like me until I was probably 17. And like
Oh,
I didn't know who to talk to about it. I didn't know how to articulate what I knew that I had been feeling. And I went through really serious depression from it. And I never saw that representation in media. I didn't read about it. I didn't see it on TV. So for some people, it's huge to have that representation because they don't feel alone. And sometimes they need that person to give them some bravery. It's really hard to come out. I've lost a lot of family members and they'll probably never speak to me again. It's a dynamic that's really, really hard. And I think that content creators want to be sure those people are heard and seen because of that dynamic.
absolutely. Um, but now that I was thinking about it, there is one character that I can say that closely like is the closest thing, and that's Liara from Mass Effect because my husband loves Mass Effect. Like he's like the biggest fan of Mass Effect. And I remember when he was first playing through the third one, that was my introduction to Mass Effect because I hadn't played it before. And when he explained to me who Liara was and what she was, like that kind of spoke to me. She's like very fluid, you know, the whole species is female. It's kind of like an amphibious kind of thing where you can just pass on your genes. But I mean, she's also an archaeologist, so that was pretty awesome. I also have an archaeology like background, so that spoke to me. But as far as like coming out, I absolutely grew up in like a holy roller Christian family, and I still haven't come out to my family, and it's okay. Like it's okay for me currently.
If they watch YouTube, you may have just come out.
I know. I'm aware of that, and that's okay. I'm actually pretty sure that I might have just come out to somebody, so it's
That's
okay.
Look at that. It's a first for the show. That's
Yes,
so exciting.
for any family members out there that are watching, I am bisexual and I am married to a man, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm bisexual and it's okay.
Totally. Now I can say that I have noticed a dynamic. It's a lot more common in media, video games, TV shows, movies, books, to see female characters be bi or lesbian, but I don't, unless I'm just not seeing it, so Rob, you can probably tell me best here. I feel like we still have a ways to go to promote men
I was
better.
just going to bring that up actually. Yeah, if there's a gay character that's going to be in anything, it's probably going to be a female. Usually, I don't know. I don't have a statistic, but it will be a lot higher. And I think I know it's because it's I think a lot of like, especially games, it's usually a male dominated. Not so much anymore, but it certainly has been a more male dominated area. So they're much more likely to be kind on a lesbian character or a bisexual female than a gay man. I think that's just what I've always seen.
Do we think that could? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but could it be the dynamic a little bit of maybe that masculinity is still in a little bit of a different place where there's kind of a mindset that.
Yeah, I think that has something to do with it. I think there's still a stigma around that area. It's a lot harder for males to look at themselves and look at other people, and see what they are instead of what they just perceive them as. Women are a lot more just open-minded and better to talk to about that kind of stuff. So it's unsurprising that it's like that. It's just how it is. I'm sure it will get better. I mean, it's slowly getting better constantly,
which is fantastic. There's a lot of
yeah,
trailblazers out there that have really put in the hard work of getting us to this point. Is it possible to, let's just be honest, I mean, sex sells, right? I mean, we look at some female characters, the way they're designed, the way their bodies are, the way their faces are. Creators choose to make them look a certain way. They choose, in some cases, to add a level of, I mean, we're seeing people meltdown because Aloy's face somehow looks fat. I don't. I mean, we've seen the controversy with Abby and stuff. So, do you think it's possible we also see more females in the queer community because it's still sexualized differently?
I actually don't know. Julie, you take over from me while I think.
Okay, I will. That's okay.
It's a good question.
Collect your thoughts. But yeah,
I wasn't expecting that good of a question. That's all.
Crystal's on it. She's a great interviewer.
Yeah, got me right on my toes there.
Sorry,
but yeah. So as far as like sexualization goes, I think that yeah, sex does sell, and I think it is changing. Because I think that there was like a recent study that came out as far as like PlayStation goes, that more women are like playing PlayStation, not like mobile games. I'm not like coming down on mobile games. That's a different discussion. But as far as like women being a part of the gaming community, it is increasing. So, I mean, most people are straight. So it's kind of changing, I think, a little bit. And you have people like, I think Naughty Dog does a really, really good job in making female characters. Like, they feel like real people, but they are pretty as well. And I mean, I like to look at aesthetically pleasing ladies as well. You know what I mean? I like to look at things. And I think that it's the same with guys too. Like, guys are sexualized too. Like, come on, Kratos is hot to me. I mean,
he is. I wish he wasn't covered in those ashes, but apart from that, yeah.
I'll take the ashes.
I mean, I'm like real life. I mean, I love women, but when I was playing Cyberpunk, I was like, I have to smash it with River. This is a beautiful man, and I am going to get down with. I mean, we are going to smash like Gallagher used to smash watermelons on that stage, boy. Like, it was just,
yeah,
it's fun and exciting. And
oh yeah, and like in The Witcher, Geralt is super sexualized. Like, he is hot. he's the hottest he's ever been. Like, thank you, Henry Cavill. You know, but like, he's the hottest he's ever been in the game and in the recent TV series. Like, that's a thing, and it's true to the book too. Like, in the book, he's not as good looking, but he gets around. Okay, like the first chapter of the first book is him, you know, going at it. So,
I mean, if I look like Henry Cavill, I would get around. Let that be known.
right.
It's just the facts. So, what do you think about gaming? Is huge, but we know geographically that gaming is still limited. There's so many places in Europe and in Asia and in South America and Central America where people don't have access specifically to gaming as a medium because of costs and availability. So, what change do you think it would have on people in some of those communities are not as open and not as accepting? There are some people in the queer community that live in very, very oppressed, very scary places. Do you think that this representation kind of helps open up the eyes to say that, you know, these are people too?
Yeah, I think everything helps. Like, because people say that, you know, what does telling a gay character in this game actually do? But it's crazy how much it could actually do to help people accept. Because once once it gets normalized in media that they like, and they have to keep seeing it, they can't just run away from it. They have to sort of confront it at some point, and then at that point, they might actually be more open to it.
So do you think that it does successfully get I mean, we could say that that may actually be part of an agenda, right? Is to show people that this exists and that these are
Yeah,
people just like your people. I mean, so you would say that it can be effective at doing that, or it is effective at doing that?
yeah, it can be if it's done well. Because if it's done poorly, then it helps nobody. But if it's done well, I think it certainly can. It's very difficult. You have to be a very good writer and a good team to do that, but it's possible.
I also think that it's a form of escape for people. You know, like, I grew up in a pretty, I mean, I wouldn't say oppressive, but like, it was totally not okay to be gay or like bisexual or anything different like that. And I think that having that kind of representation and being able to play those characters in video games is extremely freeing. It's like, I get to be me, you know?
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
actually the first game I may have seen that in is The Sims. Actually,
Yeah.
probably was The Sims 2 for me. That game is just wild. You can do whatever you want in that. Like Sims
I
4's got even got like trans options now and everything. It's crazy.
I can't think of that. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I just can't think of it. Actually, I can't think of anything prior to Sims that allowed that kind of interaction either.
No, I can't think of one either. There might be, but I don't. Definitely not as popular anyway.
Can either of you think of a game that introduced that dynamic poorly, or maybe they didn't do it poorly, they just didn't flesh the characters out as well as they could have?
Hmm. I'm going to retreat to my other phone, and I will tell you because I made a little note of things. I did a little bit of preparation. It would take me a
Yeah,
couple
that
minutes to find it.
I
that was
can't
me.
I can't honestly think of a ton of games that had specific sexualities of characters, but I know there's a lot of times like in Odyssey or Fallout where the all the NPCs didn't have a preference. You could just romance anybody that you wanted. But that wasn't really part of the story of the character, which is where I think it's very different in The Last of Us 2 is I mean, Ellie being gay is a tiny sliver of who Ellie is. It's not really
Yeah.
an
And that's
important
what I love. Like, I love that it was like, that's just who she is. Like, who cares? Like, I mean, obviously, you should care, but I mean, it's a very small part of what's going on in the story.
yeah, I mean, I think like if you think about your own neighborhood, right? And I think about my neighbors, I don't sit there and go like, well, those neighbors are straight and those neighbors are Hispanic and those like that's just the attributes are so small in comparison to who they are as a person. So your sexuality is part of your lifestyle and that leads to part of what you experience on your journey through life, but it's not the whole part of your story as a person.
Right. Right. And I think that as far as like we want to talk about like coming out and that kind of stuff, it a lot of it has to do with that. Like when you are coming out to your family or your friends, suddenly it's like that's all they care about you. Like you were fine with
Yeah,
me before. I'm still the same person.
I knew someone
And
like that once. It was
yeah,
very
and
much like the moment I told them, it was a very different relationship.
yeah, like it's like
Yeah,
I'm still the same person. I'm still Julia. And it doesn't change anything about me because it was always part of me. It was always there.
Now that totally makes sense. And I think another thing that The Last of Us 2 did that was really special was with Lev. We had
mm,
very, very little visibility for the trans community. I mean, I remember being alive for Brandon Tina and for Matthew Shepard, and there was so little visibility for the community. And I think it was really huge for people in the trans community to have that representation and for people to see that, we're all people, we're all beautifully diverse. Rob, did you find what you were looking for? You had some notes for me?
yeah. It's not really a story game, but I can think of an example where it kind of just exists for, I don't even know. I feel like brownie points maybe, and it just exists for no real reason. Which is in Overwatch. There's a couple of characters in Overwatch, which isn't a story game really for the most part, and they'll flesh out characters in like comics and stuff, and they'll have like Tracer have a girlfriend, and kind of just that's kind of just it. They mention it, and then it disappears. It kind of feels like sort of just trying to appease people, which is a big reason why a lot of people don't like when those characters show up, because it's always handled like that, where they just make them gay and then don't do anything with it.
Right. They don't use that narratively in any way, is what you're.
Yeah, that, or they just overuse it, and it's the only thing. It's their only character trait.
Right. It's like this fully fleshed out character. Oh, by the way, like it's just a okay.
Yeah, it's not part of their character. It's an add-on after the fact. Like the character was written, and then they were written to be gay after they were written.
Which could, yeah, I mean, it could be just for, I mean, you never really know if it's not a narrative journey. It might just be we're making this character gay, but there's no story to tell because it's not a narrative game. So it's really hard to kind of
Yeah,
parse out a, I don't always know what a creator's thinking when they talk about aspects
yeah,
like.
yeah, that's
Um,
another thing. You never know the intention most of the time.
oh, I'm so glad you said that. Intent is the key word. I think when you look, sometimes people don't understand things and the way they ask or the way they learn might seem abrasive, but if a person doesn't come from an intent of harm, they're not intending to harm us. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like
I know what you mean.
as we're sharing our stories and as people are being receptive and open-minded and learning, there's a learning curve that goes along with these things. So I think intent is really important. If you mess up words or you accidentally offend somebody, like in public, like I'm really tall and sometimes people will call me sir, but if you're like at least being polite and having manners, I'm not going to get upset. Like that doesn't come from a place of bad intent. But if you use negative words and maybe use some other words in there that you shouldn't and you have the intent, then that's a different story.
Yeah. I accidentally did that to somebody the other day. I felt so bad. I'm like, and I was so busy because I was at work. I was so busy and I had seen so many faces I'd seen so many people that as they were walking away, I'm like, "Well, have a good day, sir." And I'm like, and they're like, "I guess I look like a guy." And I'm like, "That's not what I meant. That's not what I
I
I
don't
used to
even.
do that so many times that just by default, I just use they and them by default until I'm
meant."
told
Yeah.
otherwise now, because I'm so bad with seeing people. My eyesight is terrible. I have to
Yep.
base you on your shape. So,
Then it would be. I mean, I'm tall and like I have broad shoulders and I have short hair, so that's kind of a valid. Like I don't make it awkward either. Like I don't bother correcting people because yeah, it can get awkward. So I think as long as people come at it from a good, we have a kitty. Oh,
Kitty.
oh, I was gonna make a joke that you came out and now you're stroking a pun. But we're breaking all kind of barriers here.
Uh,
I do want to
don't have enough
briefly.
alcohol for this. I have this.
Oh,
you
poor
can
stuff.
definitely tell how much I've had to drink as the time goes on because my cheeks get
You get a little rosy.
real red.
I do want to talk about because people ask me this a lot, like the like LGBTQIA, LMNOP, It's growing, right? It's very large, and people often ask me the A and the I because they don't really know what they are. A, for anybody who doesn't know, is for somebody who's asexual, and that's actually a pretty significant community. Like they have
Mm.
subreddits. There are people who are married that consider themselves asexual. That so there is a dynamic there. I'm certainly not that way, so I don't know how to speak on it. Um, and then there's also intersex, which I would encourage anybody who's interested in that to do a little bit of research on it. But that is where an individual genetically, the way that their parts develop may, it's very hard to articulate. Um, I think we used to have a different term for that. Does anybody remember what we used to? There was
Oh,
a
I can't
different term
remember.
for that. But you know what I'm talking about, right? There was a term.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I can't remember the term, but you may be
I do,
born.
but I'm not sure if I want to say it because I'm not sure if it's like
Might not be
offensive.
okay.
I
Then we
think it's
won't.
I think it's an offensive term, but it's like archaic.
Okay, then we won't bring that
Yeah.
up. But if you're born genetically as a woman, but your clitoris may not stop growing and you may develop a penis. So that's kind of the idea of intersex. It's a very, very, very small group of people, but it lacks a lot of awareness. There's not a lot of visibility for it. So if you are watching or listening to this and you are interested in learning more about it, that's a really good one to look into because there's a lot of visibility that's needed for that very small kind of sub community
You
there.
know what? My cat is rubbing on the computer and moving it. uh, but in Near, Kaine is intersex.
Really?
Yes, she is intersex, and in fact, in the remastered or whatever. Okay, because in Automata you can look up to be skirt and get a trophy for it. They added a trophy, and if you try to look up her skirt, she kills you. and, and it explains that like you tried to find out someone's secret, kind of a thing. But yeah, she's intersex. And the
How does it?
reason I asked my husband about like why does she wear lingerie, right? Like straight up lingerie. And he said it's because she's intersex and she wants to feel so overly womanly that you cannot mistake her that she is a woman, you know? That's why she wears lingerie.
Wow. So that's a really well thought out and designed character for that
Yeah.
purpose. I didn't play that. I'm so glad that you brought that
You
up.
should definitely play it. The soundtrack is godly. Like the soundtrack just for that too.
Wow. Rob, did you have something? I couldn't tell if you were nodding because you were agreeing or it sparked
I was
something.
agreeing with the game, but I'm thinking I need to play more there because I'm like 10 hours in and I don't know how long it is, but I've got to finish both of them.
I didn't
My
start.
backlog's too big.
I don't know why I didn't play. I don't know much about that game. That's not one I ever.
I can't remember when the original one came out.
Someone in PS3, so 15 years ago probably.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
It's like 15 years, which was huge. That was huge for back then.
Oh, wow, that is really huge.
Yeah.
Huh. It really has gotten a lot better. I mean, you said that earlier, Rob, but you would, I mean, even for males in the space, do you feel like the representation has gone up?
Oh yeah, it's not as much as for women, but and even then, I don't mind because I'm not like explicitly just like gay. I use the word gay on myself. It's just I don't have a good label for myself. I'm just whatever. So when I see any gay character, I'm pretty happy, even if it's a lesbian. So when I saw Ellie, I was like, hey, that's good. But it doesn't really have to kind of conform to me.
Just
But
kind
there
of
are,
like an appreciative nod.
yeah, just that is for me is good enough. I know it's not for some people, and it should be equal for representation everyone gets. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to think of an example of a male gay character recently. I can't think of one. I can think of one in the first The Last of Us. There was Bill. I remember that, which was
Oh yeah,
explicit.
yeah.
Forgot
I
Yeah,
forgot about
that.
that.
yeah. Which is another
There,
kind of thing you can miss because there's a note that you have to grab and then give to him, and you get a bit more of that.
I
But
don't
that's all I can think of.
I don't think there are a lot of male protagonists or antagonists in gaming that are.
There's a lot in RPGs that are optional, which is still great, but it's a lot of them are deliberately made optional.
Which I mean, I'm fine with, just because I think it
Oh
does.
yeah, I'm fine.
I mean, it's like you said, it's a nod. I think that's a great term, is to say it's a nod to it. I mean, I'm happy to see anything that's different from me. Like, to play a game which is complete fantasy as somebody who doesn't look and act like me is really cool, and it's an insight to somebody else's world that inspired that creator to do
And
that.
I also think that people need to play around with it too. Like I would just love to see more diverse bodies being beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like diverse bodies being beautiful.
that was my
I would love
favorite thing
that.
about The Last of Us 2 is Abby. It's such a good like body type to have you play for so long. Just this huge buff woman. I've never seen it before. I don't think, unless it's
No.
a custom character.
I mean, I'm jealous of Abby's guns. I get to start. I'm finished. I'm
Yeah.
fully inoculated now, so I get to go back to the gym. But I want some Abby guns. Are you kidding? Shit, I
Yeah.
want these bad boys. Yeah, I do think, and representation is all groups of diversity. So if we think, specifically about like queer characters, and we look, I don't even think we've really touched the surface, because I think The Last of Us 2, they didn't just make characters that were trans and bi and gay, they also made them non-white as well in some cases. So I think they added levels of diversity that very much exist in the real world.
And the game did so well, and it, for the most part, got its acclaimed quite well. So, because there's another stigma that like a gay character will or a female will scare away people. Because there's this weird thing of not putting women on the front. That's a Ubisoft thing, which is not wanting to put women on the front cover, which is such a weird
Oh my God, you're right.
mentality.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they claimed Cassandra was canon in Odyssey and female Ivor was
yeah,
canon in Valhalla, but neither one were on any of like the cover art or the statues.
yeah. That's a higher up thing. Such a weird mentality that it won't sell. I
So
don't
then let
know.
me ask.
I think box art in general is a weird thing. Like things that clearly would sell so well, they don't go with the better box art. Like compositionally, artistically, aesthetically, in every capacity, you'll have two sets of things and one of them will just be vastly superior and they won't go with it. I don't know why.
Mm.
Sorry, I have a 2.5-year-old dog who's like mother dearest. Like every now and again, she's like, "Why, hang on!" She just gets real. So then let me ask you this: we all know that Last of Us 2 took massive risks. Narratively, the decisions they made with the characters and the diversity was a huge risk with a lot of repercussions and a lot of back. Do you think that people's reactions to that is going to hinder content creators taking those same risks, or do you think it did well enough that other creators are going to take more risks like that?
I think it did way too well for them
Yeah.
to chalk it up as it being a failure, because that game did. I wasn't expecting it to do that well. I was watching the Game Awards and I was like, I hope Ghost of Tsushima wins one award. I think it won something, but it won everything. Pretty much, it pretty much won everything, and
So
a lot of it was deserved as well.
so the bottom line is that it's a business. They like money. They really like money. So if it makes money, you can bet that they're going to make things similar to it.
That is
Mm.
true. I mean, I know they made money, and I know for the most part people enjoyed it. And I feel Miles Morales, I think, was absolutely phenomenal for so many diversities. I mean, they had so much representation, front and center, done so well, delivered so well. So I hope we see more of that stuff and kind of see more of. I hate to
Absolutely.
call it. I hate to call it risks because it's really normal, real world stuff. But
But it's kind of not. I mean, it is and it's not. Children, they are blank slates. They don't have the stigmas, they don't have the biases that grown adults have. So you have somebody that's just coming of age that's buying Miles Morales or buying The Last of Us 2. They don't care. They don't care. They care about whether or not the game is fun. They care about whether they like the character. Like, so I have multiple jobs. Like one of my like I have my own business as a jeweler, but like one of the jobs that I have is like decorating cakes. I decorate cakes and everybody's asking for Spider-Man cakes. All these little kids, they love Spider-Man because they've played the games. And they're specifically asking for Miles Morales Spider-Man cakes.
He is the best Spider-Man. Just
He
saying.
is. He is.
I love original Spidey, but he's very. I don't know. He feels like he's very trapped in his time period, and Miles just kind of taken on from him.
he's dude, he's just got like that thing. Like he's got that like he's nerdy and he's adorable and he's still got that BDE. Like he's just the shit. And I think that's fantastic. I hope I sure do hope that continues.
Oh, I'm sure that game. Miles Morales is doing crazy. Didn't there was something that said it managed to outsell like Ghost of Tsushima at some point. I read that the other day. It's doing really well.
That's awesome. And they just executed it so well. I mean, the characters were
Mm.
so. This is a whole nother tangent, but we could do a whole episode on talking about Finn and how I feel Finn is the perfect representation for so many individuals that are underprivileged here. And like, but that's don't get me going down that rabbit hole. But we may have to do an episode on that because that is something that's fantastic. So as we kind of wrap up, is there any kind of final statements or anything else that you want to talk about, or anything that you feel is really important to say?
So, I hate to borrow some of Rob's words as he's
Uh-oh.
searching for his own to speak as a conclusion, but I really loved when you said that like it is not a political statement to have diverse bodies and people in video games. It's not being woke. It Those people exist out there, and if you would just take the time to just do a little research, with an open mind, you will enrich yourself and enrich others. And you're doing everybody a favor. It's okay.
I know that we said we were closing, but I do have a quick question for each of you. Do
Yes.
you think if content creators, like, I mean, we've seen like Sports Illustrated, for example, is featuring plus size bikini models. Ashley Graham is one of the hottest people on the planet. I mean, she's a plus size gal and she is absolutely stunning. Do you think if content creators in the video game industry start shifting some of their characters to have more diversity in body styles and in the way they make them attractive, do you think it will negatively impact, or do you think that representation and that realness will positively impact?
I don't think it's the same with gay characters as well, and I don't think that the majority of people, there aren't a large number of people that won't buy it because of a certain character. Like, people will complain, "Oh, this character is whatever," but they'll still play it if they're interested in it. There is a group of people that are just awful that won't, but the majority of people are still gonna, if they want to play it, they'll play it.
Julia?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like what Rob said. Like, if people really want to play something, they're going to play it, you know? So I think it does too well. I think we are at a point in video games because there are a lot of games. There are a lot of games out there. And people have seen the same body type, the same hackneyed characters, that it would be refreshing. And it was refreshing to see somebody like Abby, who is a different body type, but she's pretty. She's really pretty. You know, like, she's gorgeous. I think that it will do well. I don't think it'll negatively impact it, because I think people are so hungry for new standards, you know?
Uh-huh. Speaking of hungry, dude, I wish I could put a burrito down like Abby. I found I'm not making fun of her. I'm much more masculine, and that's the body type I aspire to have. Like, that, she is a badass. Like, I want to eat a burrito like that and get arms like that and jab somebody in the neck and kill them that fast. Are you kidding? That's awesome.
You want to turn yourself into a literal killing machine.
I mean, fantasy. I love video games. That's the point, right? It's like that. Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think that fantasy, like, hell yeah. So, Rob, what are some of your final thoughts as we close out here?
Just people should just people just need to be more open-minded. The best thing I ever did was a few years ago was just be open-minded about basically anything. Because once you do that, you stop caring about things like that. Like, I don't care about, like, if I see a female character, maybe when I was like a lot younger, if there was an option, I would probably pick the male. Now I usually pick the female because the voice acting is usually much better with female characters. I don't know why, but the female voice actor is always much better. So just be open-minded. That's all you can do. It makes your experience much better.
Yeah, the real world is multicultural. It's multiracial. Everybody doesn't have the same sexual preference, and we're different heights, and we're different body types, and that's really the beauty of it, is how different that we all are. And I think even the rarest of people deserve to be heard, and they deserve to see themselves as part of the fabric of that beauty. Sweet.
That was a really beautiful statement.
Thank you.
That was really eloquent.
Sometimes I have some bangers, and then other times it's like, what did she just say? So I'm very hit or miss. So thanks everybody for watching, and thank you to Julia and for Rob and for being here. And I know that you will see us all again very soon. So bye everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye.